Douglas V. Gibbs here, politicalpistachio.com, douglasvgibbs.com, Mr. Constitution to many of you. And yes, I am back from another break, another medical malady. Hopefully it'll be my last one. But I'm all recouped, ready to roll. And I want to talk to you guys today about language. I didn't get a specific question from people, but I get various questions regarding language. And let me start with this. 5 times in the Federalist Papers, James Madison explained the difference between a democracy and a republic. And the reason why is there were those that were against the Constitution at the time who were arguing that there is no difference between a democracy and a republic, that they were the same thing. And so Madison felt the need in the Federalist Papers to explain that indeed there is a difference. In a pure democracy, all power is given to the people, and as John Adams explained, all democracies commit suicide. And Madison said that in democracies, lives are short and their deaths are violent. So language also plays a large part with the U.S. Constitution. And the problem is we have a society, an anti-constitutional movement that believes that the Constitution is living and breathing, and that its language changes with time, that the meaning of words or the intent changes as society changes, as the populace changes, as the opinions of the politicians, the judges change. There was a recent news article, which I think I did a video on, about how a judge decided that the draft is no longer constitutional. It used to be, but no longer is, because now it does not include women, and now that women are serving, it is no longer constitutional. It has changed with the times, and therefore, to be constitutional, the law must change with the times. There are terms in the U.S. Constitution that have been changed over time also. For example, the word regulate. The word regulate shows up 3 times in the U.S. Constitution. One time when it comes to regulating weights and measures of money, Article 1, Section 8. Then regulating commerce, and including between the states, and a well-regulated militia. Well, the word regulate, if you were to use that term today with the average individual, they will tell you that the word regulate means to be controlled by government, to be regulated by government, to be overseen by government. And so, such as the Commerce Clause, so that means if it crosses state lines, then the federal government automatically has authority to regulate it. That is not the original intent. The word regulate, if you go back to that time period, actually did not mean to be controlled by government or to restricted by law. I think it's the term that most people come by, to restrict by law. They believe that's what regulate means. But back then, if you go to the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, you find that that definition was not the popular definition. It was not the most used definition. The more used definitions had to do with regulating weights and measures. You put sugar in your tea, you're regulating the sweetness. Flow. If you turn on and off a hose, you are regulating the flow. But the term was largely used by the Founding Fathers as meaning to put in good order. Or as some people would say, to make regular. Okay, so Commerce Clause, in order to be made regular, that means that it was irregular in the first place. That is the case for that definition. Today's definition would say, no, it has to be controlled, so that means it was flowing okay, just needed to be controlled. So, which is it? Well, if we go back to that time period, what we see is that commerce was not flowing. It was not flowing regularly. It was not flowing evenly. It was not in good order. And so federal government would need to be brought in as a mediator. You'll also notice that the Commerce Clause is in Article 1. Article 1 is regarding the legislative branch. Today, what we see is the Commerce Clause being enforced and regulated by the court system. Well, if that was the case, if that was the intent, then first of all, the need to regulate commerce would be listed in Article 3 of the Constitution, which addresses the judicial branch. What was going on is commerce was not flowing between the states as well as it should, and so therefore they understood that every once in a while the Congress would need to be brought in to be a mediator, to create the opportunity to get things flowing again, to bring the two parties that are arguing, the two states, together so that they could come to a mutual agreement, then pass a piece of legislation setting that essentially in stone and then going from there. In other words, the federal government's not supposed to be involved in commerce unless there's a problem. Their job, after all, is to make it regular or to put it in good order. If it's already in good order, it's already flowing, then there is no need for federal influence. And then when there is supposed to be federal influence, it needs to be legislatively to mediate between two disagreeing states. Well, that really kind of, when you use the word regulated that way, it goes into, the Second Amendment also. When in the Second Amendment it says, regulated militia. Does that mean a militia controlled by government? Does that mean a government regulated militia that is restricted by the law, by federal law? No. Let's go back in history again. What was the biggest problem when it came to the militia during the American Revolution? It wasn't in good order. Many of them didn't even wear socks. Martha Washington was known for darning socks for the troops. If it wasn't for a strong leader like George Washington, I don't know what would have happened. What needed to happen was, in the future, they realized that the militias needed to be put in better order than it was during the Revolution. It needed to be put in good order. It needed to be a well-regulated militia, a militia that is in good order. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the states. In other words, a militia that's put in good order is necessary for the freedom of the states. Therefore, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Regulated. That's just another term. It's another part of language that has changed. And we can go back in even more language. I mean, originally the Republicans were the Jeffersonians. Eventually they changed to the Democrat Party. Now the Republican Party is the new party. And in that process, we have the Democrats who call themselves liberals. Well, back during the very beginning, the Founding Fathers were considered to be quite liberal. Well, what does liberal mean? It means, different. Taking stances that is not part of the establishment, a part of the norm, so on and so forth. Also meant liberty, liberal, liberty, and seeking the freedoms that go along with a liberal stance. They also believed in a New World Order. The New World Order was something that was being led by America, a shining example for the rest of the world to follow. They were, after all, in the New World, and it was a New World Order that was emerging that was very different than what was going on in the Old World. So I can walk into a meeting today and be referring to what the Founding Fathers considered themselves to be and say, welcome all of you liberal New World Orders. And people will be upset because now, of course, even that's changed. Right? So liberal now means leftist rather than a defender of the U.S. Constitution and freedom and liberty and our Declaration of Independence. And the New World Order, that's a global thing that has emerged. So language is constantly changing, and they do it on purpose because they want our Constitution to be a living and breathing document. That's why they do it. Because if language changes, then that means that the Constitution changes. But the thing is, the U.S. Constitution is not supposed to change with the language. After all, it is a social contract. And when it comes to social contracts, either an authority is in the contract or it's not. Social contracts are not living, breathing documents. Common law, unwritten common law in Britain, that was living and breathing. That changed with the whims of society. And that's why we wrote our Constitution, so that it wouldn't be a living and breathing document. So it wouldn't change with the whims. It wouldn't alter just because they monkeyed with the language. Language does change, sometimes on purpose, sometimes accidentally. So that's why we have to go back to original intent. That's why we need to go back to, when it comes to the U.S. Constitution, understanding what was intended at the time. Not what the words mean today, what they meant then. It's the reason why I studied Madison's notes. James Madison took, great notes during the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Or how about the Congressional Globe, which is the congressional record in which the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were argued. I've studied those too. I want to go back to what they meant, what they originally intended, because language changes. And it is our duty as Americans to make sure that the change of language doesn't change our liberty. Doesn't change the meanings of the U.S. Constitution. Doesn't send us in some strange direction because everybody thinks that the Constitution is supposed to be living and breathing. With freedom comes responsibility, and part of that responsibility is understanding the language and the original intent. So sometimes language changes, so we need to make sure we understand what originally was intended. That said, we are back in the saddle again. Hopefully we'll get out as many videos as we can. If you have any requests, any questions, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, and my newest book is out. It's called A Promise of American Liberty. It's $39.99 on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. And if you see me at an event, I add a penny and I make it a flat 40, charging a penny for that, autograph. A Promise of American Liberty. It's a 525-page reference book. You want this book. Anything and everything you ever needed to know about government, history, and the U.S. Constitution when it comes to our liberty is in that book. There's 4 glossaries, there's 4 appendixes, and an index. Everything you ever needed to know is in the book, and everything you ever needed to look up is easily available for you to look up. So once again, the name of the book is A Promise of American Liberty, $39.99 on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. Until the next question, until the next time, my name is Douglas V. Gibbs, and all I got to say is stay safe and, stay constitutional. We'll see you next time.